Some lists are written to remember, some to erase. And then there are the ones that shouldn't exist at all. Lists that change when no one's touching them. Lists that grow longer, even after the men named on them are already dead. During the Vietnam War, American and South Vietnamese forces stumbled onto something they couldn't explain, a handwritten kill list inside an abandoned NVA tunnel complex. Nothing strange about that, except the names on it. Because they weren't Americans. They weren't officers. They weren't even military targets. They were themselves, recon teams, radio operators, medics, men whose locations weren't supposed to be known by any enemy. And one more detail, some of the names were crossed out, but not in ink. Something had dragged a finger through the wet paper, long after the tunnel had gone cold. Over the following months, patrols kept encountering variations of the same list, rewritten, expanded, sometimes pinned to trees, sometimes tucked into bodies of fallen enemy scouts. It didn't follow logic, it didn't follow intelligence patterns, it followed them, and every time a name was added, someone died. Tonight, we descend into the humid dark of a war where the enemy didn't just track you, it knew you. This is the story of the kill list that breathed, a list that watched, a list that hunted, a list that refused to stay dead, stay close. If your name's not on the list now, it might be when we're done. It began with a tunnel collapse that wasn't supposed to happen. In the spring of 1960, a CIDG reconnaissance platoon, patrolling near the Cambodian border, uncovered an NVA tunnel complex. Nothing unusual. The region was full of them. Narrow passageways reinforced with bamboo, stocked with rice, AK magazines, medical kits, propaganda leaflets. But this one was different. The Americans found it by accident when a Montagnard scout stepped on a patch of earth that sounded hollow. The ground buckled, the tunnel roof gave way, and the squad fell into a darkness that swallowed sound. The air inside was wrong. Thick, warm, alive. When they switched on their flashlights, the beams hit walls painted with charcoal markings, numbers, arrows, diagrams of patrol routes, and something else. Names, American names, written not in English, but in Vietnamese phonetic approximations. Some misspelled, some perfect. Corporal Jason Reeves, Medic Halverson, Lieutenant Moore, 3 reconnaissance teams whose movements hadn't been recorded on any map the enemy should have had. But the worst part wasn't the presence of the names. It was the list the platoon found deeper inside. A single sheet of rice paper pinned to a bamboo support beam with a rusted NVA knife. The writing was neat, precise, cold. 27 names, all American, all spelled correctly. At the bottom of the list was a symbol drawn in red, a circle with 3 small vertical marks beneath it. No one recognized it, but someone noticed that 5 of the names had been crossed out, not with a pen, not with a brush, with a finger. The paper was torn and smeared, as if something damp had dragged through the ink while it was still wet, despite the fact that the tunnel was bone dry, and the list had been posted, judging by mold patterns, weeks earlier. The platoon radioed it in. Within hours, a Max V SOG advisory team arrived by Huey. They ordered the area secured. The list was removed. The tunnel collapsed with explosives. End of story. Or so they thought. That night, while the platoon slept in a defensive perimeter, 2 men woke screaming. They said they'd heard whispering in Vietnamese, from underground, like someone was still writing. When morning came, the platoon sergeant, Sergeant Dalton, went to clean his M16. His name tape was missing from his uniform. It lay on the ground beside his boots, and someone had drawn a circle on the back of the cloth, with 3 vertical marks beneath it, the same symbol from the list. That was the first time Dalton had ever requested immediate rotation out of the IEAO. He didn't get it, because SOG had already taken the list, and they wanted to know why an enemy kill list was breathing down the necks of men who weren't supposed to exist. SOG brought the list to Faye, a forward operations base tucked inside a patch of jungle so dense even the monsoon had trouble getting through. Intelligence officers spread the rice paper on a map table while a generator hummed in the corner. Captain Morgan, the SOG officer in charge, noticed the handwriting first. "This isn't Vietnamese," he said quietly. "Not standard, not dialect, not modern script." It was older, formal, monastic, almost. One analyst compared it to the handwriting used in North Vietnamese political re-education manuals, precise, ceremonial, as if the writer believed the act carried spiritual weight. But the real problem wasn't the style, it was the accuracy. The names on the list included men from SOG teams that operated deep across the border, teams whose identities were supposed to be protected by layers of secrecy, false designations, and dead-drop communication. Their missions didn't go through standard army channels. Their reports were sealed. Their names didn't appear on rosters, yet someone had them. One name in particular made Morgan's stomach sink. SFC Jonathan Rourke, a SOG team leader whose reconnaissance missions penetrated deeper into Laos than any other unit. He was a ghost, even among ghosts. "How the hell did they get his name?" Morgan muttered. The analyst shrugged. "We don't know how they got any of them." Worse still, Rourke had gone missing 2 weeks earlier during a night infiltration. No confirmed KIA, no radio contact, just silence. And now his name was on a list with a red circle next to it. Not crossed out, not touched, almost like the writer was waiting. SOG intelligence scrambled to contact units who had names appearing on the list. 4 of them were fine, 2 were wounded, 3 had died in the last month. Their deaths weren't unusual for the AO, but the circumstances were. 1 died to a booby trap so precise it felt personalized. Another was shot by a sniper who couldn't have known his route. A third fell in an ambush on a trail he'd never used before. Someone was hunting them, not at random. By name, a comms officer approached Morgan. "Sir, we have something else." He held up a second sheet, rice paper identical to the first. Found at a forward patrol site used last night. Pinned to a tree, 27 names, same list, but now 6 were crossed out, including 1 man who was still alive at sunset. Morgan exhaled slowly. The list wasn't tracking kills, it was predicting them, and it was updating itself. 3 nights later, the jungle spat someone out. A LRRP, long-range reconnaissance patrol, team moving through a ravine heard a human voice. Weak, ragged, impossible. They found a man crawling through the mud, uniform shredded, hands bloody. It was SFC Jonathan Rourke, the man from the list, missing for 2 weeks, now barely breathing. His dog tags were gone. His boots were missing. His face was a map of bruises and cuts. But that wasn't what disturbed the team. It was his refusal to be touched. When a medic tried to lift him, Rourke screamed, not in pain, but in terror. "Don't move me. Don't move me. They're following the sound. They hear movement. They hear names. You say a name, and they find you." The medic froze. "Who's following you?" Rourke stared at him with eyes that had seen something break inside the dark. "The list," he whispered. "It breathes. It knows." He passed out. When they evacuated him by chopper, his vitals were stable but strange. Elevated cortisol, rapid eye movement despite unconsciousness, brainwaves that spiked violently whenever someone said a name near him. At the field hospital, they cut away his shredded uniform. Pinned to the inside of his sleeve with a sharpened bamboo splinter was a folded sheet of rice paper. The same list, the same 27 names, but this version had something new. A second page. On it, written in the same ceremonial script, "The list must balance." Rourke woke during the exam, bolting upright with such force he nearly threw 2 corpsmen across the room. His first words were, "Don't say the names." The doctors asked him what had happened during the 2 weeks he was missing. His account was fragmented, traumatized, but a pattern emerged. His recon team had infiltrated a ridge near the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They found a tunnel entrance. Inside, they discovered markings, names, symbols. Then the ambush hit. His team died one by one. Not chaotically, but systematically. As if someone was checking them off, Rourke whispered. He escaped into the jungle, injured, delirious. He crawled for days. Every night, he heard scratching, paper moving, breathing that wasn't human, a sound like chalk dragged across stone. And each morning, he found a list pinned somewhere nearby. Trees, rocks, even the inside of his own torn rucksack. Names crossed out in the night. But here's what terrified him most. By the end of his ordeal, the list contained his name at the top, in red, not crossed out, but waiting. After Rourke's return, SOG Command elevated the situation to unexplainable but operationally relevant. In other words, something was happening. They didn't know what, but men were dying. They increased patrol security, changed call signs, altered mission schedules. It didn't matter. The list adapted. Teams began finding updated versions of the list pinned in bizarre locations. On a claymore they had just set. Inside a ration tin no one had opened. Under the body of a recently killed NVA scout. Stuffed into the barrel of an M60. Folded into the mouth of a dead sapper. Always identical handwriting. Always dry ink. Always fresh paper. One night, 2 SOG teams on opposite sides of the border found lists with the exact same changes. Names added or crossed out within the same hour. Someone, or something, was tracking them in real time. Intelligence officers theorized an enemy network using scouts, informants, coded signals. But that didn't explain the personal details, because the lists started including new information. Personal items the men carried, wounds they'd received, the distance they traveled that day, the number of rounds left in the specific magazines. The list wasn't hunting soldiers, it was hunting identities. A comms specialist discovered a horrifying pattern. Names were added after someone said them aloud on the radio. Even encrypted calls triggered updates, as if the list could hear. When SOG tried switching to hand signals and writing boards, the list adapted again. It added numbers, then call signs, then initials. Finally, it added photos. One morning, Captain Morgan found a Polaroid of himself pinned to a tree, with a red circle drawn underneath. He had never been photographed in uniform. That night, a claymore near the perimeter was triggered. The tripwire had been cut manually. The claymore angled upward, a message. The list wasn't just tracking them now, it was communicating. Rourke deteriorated quickly. His fever climbed. His muscles twitched involuntarily. He refused to sleep because, he said, he could hear the scratching when his eyes closed. Doctors restrained him, sedated him. At 3:14 a.m., a nurse screamed. Rourke's restraints were intact, but his left hand was extended off the bed. 2 fingers dipped into a cup of spilled water on the floor. His hand moved slowly, deliberately, writing. On the tile beside the water was a message, formed in wet strokes. Balance the list. They moved him to the psychiatric ward. He lasted 2 more days. On the morning of his death, every lamp in the ward flickered. Paper rustled without wind. A cold draft swept through the corridor. When the nurse re-entered his room, Rourke was sitting upright despite the restraints. He looked at her. "Don't say my name," he whispered. Then he exhaled, and didn't inhale again. But here's the impossible part. As he died, the heart monitor didn't flatline normally. It scratched. The waveform jittered, skipped, stuttered, like something was breathing through the machine. The corpsman who removed his dog tags reported another anomaly. Pinned beneath Rourke's shirt, against bare skin, was a fresh sheet of rice paper. Still warm, still damp, with a new list, 27 names, all crossed out, except one, Captain Morgan. Morgan evacuated his team to a remote landing zone near Dak-To, hoping distance would break the pattern. It didn't. Over the next 3 days, they found lists under C ration boxes, sealed since 1967. One was tucked into Morgan's boot while he slept. Another was pinned to a tree above the reach of any man without a ladder. One appeared folded into the chamber of an unloaded Car-15. The handwriting was always identical. The ink always dry, the paper always free of moisture despite the monsoon. The list was no longer following them. It was inside their perimeter. The men grew silent. Superstition replaced logic. No one spoke names, not even surnames. They referred to each other by pointing, gestures, nods, but the jungle doesn't care about precautions. On the fourth night, a sapper infiltrated the perimeter. He crawled within 10 meters before anyone heard him. When they checked his body, they found a paper in his mouth. A list. Morgan at the top. Not crossed out, not circled. Underlined. A CH-34 helicopter arrived to extract the team. Morgan boarded last. As he climbed in, he noticed something pinned to the inside of the helicopter door frame. A list. But this one was different. Below his name was a handwritten note. When the list is finished, it breathes again. Morgan exhaled slowly. Then the helicopter jerked violently. A sapper, one they hadn't seen, detonated an explosive under the skids. The blast consumed the jungle in a sphere of fire. For a moment, the world became orange light and shockwave. Then silence. Hours later, rescue teams reached the wreckage. Burned metal, scorched earth. No survivors. Except one thing. A sheet of rice paper, untouched by flame, lying atop the debris. It contained only one name, crossed out, Morgan, and at the bottom, written in immaculate red ink, list complete. But the paper did something no one expected. It fluttered, just once, like a final breath. Most lists are written by men. This one wasn't. It didn't track kills. It didn't predict them. It claimed them. Names spoken aloud become marks on paper. Marks become targets. Targets become ghosts. And ghosts need company. The tunnel where the first list was found collapsed decades ago, but soldiers who served in that AO still talk about it. How the jungle went quiet after Morgan's death. How paper sometimes drifted into camp on windless nights. How some men refused to say names during patrol briefings, because a list that breathes doesn't care who writes it, only who reads it, and maybe who speaks loud enough for it to hear. I'm Captain Nightwhisper, and this was the kill list that breathed. If you dare whisper in the dark tonight, make sure you whisper to no one, especially not yourself.